Welcome to the Retail Media Insights podcast series, where we will take a deep dive into the fast-changing retail media ecosystem. Together, we will delve into new technologies, innovative strategies, and essential mental models that will make us smarter about this space. We will hear perspectives from retail ad tech companies, retail media networks, and advertisers. I'm your host, Keshav, and you can follow my perspectives on retail media through my Retail Media Insights newsletter. My guest today is Seth Tapsfield, who is currently the sales director at LiveRamp in the UK. He has been working in the retail and media industry for the last 8 years. In this episode, we dive deep into the different data clean room use cases powered by LiveRamp, the parties involved in these use cases, the minimum data retailers would need to start their monetization journey, and challenges and opportunities ahead in the data clean room space. Hi, Seth. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Keshav. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being so adventurous to be my first guest on this podcast.
Yeah, not at all. Happy to be the guinea pig for it. This is my first podcast as well.
No, that's absolutely perfect. Seth, before we dive into the data clean room ecosystem, I want to ask you a little bit about your educational background. You did your bachelor's in sports technology. What is it? And what do people typically go on to do after that? And how come you went on to do something very different?
It's a very good question. Sports technology is another term for sports engineering. We were very much tied to the engineering department at Loughborough. If you think of sports science as being the science around the body, nutrition, all that sort of stuff, sports technology is around all the other elements of sport, the equipment, the mechanics, all of that sort of stuff. And fun enough, when I signed up to do that, I basically thought I would be choosing the colours on Adidas Predator football boots. That was kind of my dream. It's rapidly turned out that the degree was actually a bit part maths, bit part biology, chemistry, physics, and DT, none of which I'd done at A-level. So I was a full fish out of water when I first started my degree. And to be honest, for the majority of it, I was a bit of a fish out of water. In terms of what people usually do post that degree, they would go on to work for all the big sporting brands, Adidas, Ping, Nike, to do things like design, running trainers. One of the cool stories of people that did that degree, one of the graduate students designed the Adidas Jabulani football, which was the football that got used in the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, which actually got a load of abuse because it swerved everywhere whenever anybody kicked it. But that was somebody on my course that actually designed that ball, or the team at Loughborough that designed it. So yeah, people usually go into that. They probably don't usually end up in an ad tech world talking about retail media like I have. But I have to say the one thing that I knew I didn't want to do when I finished my degree was the thing that I just spent 3 years and quite a bit of money studying, which was sports technology. So I kind of came out and fell, as lots of people do, that don't necessarily know what they want to do, into a kind of a sales role. My career since then has just progressed through different sales roles to now obviously end up in the kind of the ad tech space, working for LiveRamp, talking to retailers about retail media and how our tech can support them.
Wow, that's fascinating. I did my bachelor's in India, and sports tech isn't a field I'd ever heard of. In India, the hierarchy is you apply for engineering if you're a bright student, and if you're not a bright student, you apply for economics and accounting. And if you're still not bright, then you apply for arts. And in all of this, sports engineering is never a field that came, but I hope it does so that people get exposed to more disciplines before they can choose what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a big cricket fan growing up. I still am a big cricket fan, but I was crazy passionate about all the cricket equipment, how bats were made, how the pads, everything. I knew pretty much everything about different kind of cricket equipment. So that was also an inspiration for me, which I imagine, obviously, given India's love for cricket, there'd be quite a few people that would also have a similar passion to try and understand if they made it available in India.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it'd be a very lucrative career given the scale of that market.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Switching gears now to data clean rooms. I first came to know about data clean rooms 2 years back when I was leading the retail media business at Ocado. And my first thought was very simply data clean room means it's a neutral room where two parties can put their data and can run some analysis out of it without seeing each other's personal data. But I think over the last couple of years, I've realized data clean rooms are much more than that. So said, as one of the major data clean room providers at LiveRamp, can you help us break down the solutions that LiveRamp provides?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the maybe common misconceptions around LiveRamp is that we are just a data clean room provider. And this is not a misconception that is really anybody's fault, because obviously this is still a pretty new space. And I think, historically retailers haven't operated within the kind of tech space. So everybody is all kind of trying to make their way through. Obviously, I think, as you mentioned, a clean room in terms of an overarching position around a clean room is to have two data sets and to be able to look to leverage those two data sets to overlay data, but to do so in a privacy safe and GDPR compliant way. From a LiveRamp perspective, certainly clean room capabilities are part of our portfolio, our capabilities that our main platform, the Safe Haven platform, has. But I guess that falls within the kind of wider umbrella of what LiveRamp is, which is more of a data collaboration platform. And obviously, a lot of what clean rooms are is around collaboration, as you mentioned, two data sets being able to use and retailers and partners being able to collaborate. But I guess outside of that, actually looking at, from a LiveRamp perspective, how we can support things such as first-party data strategy on a wider level, whether that be in terms of a retailer or a brand's own marketing activation, or whether they want to access other data, retailer data, or if a retailer wants to commercialize their data with a supplier. I guess that's really where we kind of sit. We at least see ourselves as not just a data clean room, albeit people do know us for our clean room capabilities. That's just one element of how we look to support our clients and partners.
Understood. Going into more on the data collaboration side, once two parties have put their data, what kind of problems are you then solving? If you can give just high-level industry examples as well.
Of course. So data collaboration spans a huge array of opportunities, I guess, as it were, and probably worth defining what a data collaboration platform is. We look at it about bringing together data from external data sources, internal data sources to unlock capabilities. Now, those capabilities may be around insights, they may be around audience building, they may be around activation and around measurement. Okay, so if you're a retailer or brand or an advertiser or whoever it is, all four of those elements will play quite a key role in terms of your own marketing. And you may want to obviously leverage your own data, and you may want to bring in additional third-party data sets to utilize that across those four use cases. Of course, within the other element of that is that you can then also commercialize that data through a retail media offering, whereby suppliers that don't have access to their own data will want to collaborate to utilize retailer data to do things like activation, measurement, but also insights as well. So we kind of think about collaboration at quite a macro level. And really what LiveRamp does is provide the capabilities, both in terms of a platform, but also an identity infrastructure that impacts every part of the digital ecosystem to enable partners, whoever it might be, retailers, suppliers, third-party data providers, platforms, agencies, to ultimately look to collaborate using data.
Understood. So those four use cases, and sounds like there's a fifth one, which is more to do with identity. But those four use cases, audience building, activating those audiences, measuring, and then insights, would you help just give a one-line description of each of the four to our audience here?
Yeah, so just touching on something that you mentioned there in terms of identity being, I guess, a fifth use case, what I would suggest is that the identity infrastructure is the element that underlines everything. Okay, so if you want to do insights on your own audience, create a single customer view, the ability to tie individual insights to an identity, it's a highly important element. So that facilitates potentially a retailer to do their own insights, but it also might allow them to provide insights on a customer individual level to a CPG or a supplier. If you then think about audience building, you need to build audiences based against a list of individuals, a list of identities that are underlying that proposition. The activation is obviously a key piece, and that's really where that infrastructure, our ability to activate across social, CTV, search, display, leveraging our identity infrastructure, whereby all of those end platforms also are connected via that infrastructure. And then again, the measurement ties it all together. So understanding the audience that I've activated on X channel has then resulted in a sale, whether that be online or, more excitingly, something that's relatively new in market, in store. And that's obviously massively important for retail media, especially the kind of key retail media players such as grocers, where the vast majority of sales still happen in store. So for them to be able to provide measurement to their suppliers, you need to have that underlying identity to be able to understand who's been exposed online and then who's gone to purchase in store. And that's where loyalty programs are really paramount, but also actually the ability to connect a single customer view, as it were, your identity that you have into the ecosystem. That's really where we play.
Two questions here. One, when it comes to insights, give us some examples of what kind of insights are you talking about outside of what is already being used from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, from an insights perspective, there's a couple of ways that we can work. So if everything is tied at that customer level, we can facilitate for retailers to be able to make customer level insights available to CPGs. Now, what you might see a lot of in market is aggregated insights. That's valuable to a certain extent, but really where the big value is for the CPGs is understanding at that customer level. The key other element that we have within the platform is that you can take those customer level insights and make those insights immediately actionable by building an audience, activating that audience, and then obviously measuring the success and really tying that full loop all together from an insights to an audience building to activation to measurement.
Understood. That makes sense. Is there a pecking order in terms of how much these solutions are being used?
Yeah, so for some of our more mature clients and partners, they're using the full end-to-end suite of tools that sit within the Safe Haven platform. Lots of retailers as a starting point are looking to be able to activate against their first-party data. That is the use case where you can most quickly and easily see tangible ROI if you're able to activate your first-party data into end platforms. Obviously, that kind of goes hand in hand with the measurement. So I would suggest that whether it be for their own marketing or for commercializing through their retail media network, lots of our partners are starting with activation and measurement as the initial use cases and then looking to expand from there.
Got it. Okay. Overlaying my hat of running a retail media business at Hokados. The first question that actually came to my mind when the whole concept of data clean rooms had come and some of the brands had approached us was where does the data collaboration happen? Because in my mind, the FMCGs have very little first party data. So my hypothesis was a lot of that data collaboration is actually between the retailer and the publisher, matching retailer audiences to who can be made available on a publisher website, rather than between a retailer and a brand putting their data together. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a really good question. When we talk about the clean room and the collaboration piece, you're right in that the CPGs don't have huge amounts of data. So if you just think about a clean room as a pure kind of overlap, where you're taking a pool of Ocado data and you're taking a pool of CPG data and you're just looking at where that overlap is, and then you're then looking to maybe be able to monetize that overlap. That's obviously, I think, quite a potentially a small pot. We look at it in a slightly different way. And again, this comes back to our identity infrastructure. When we talk about collaboration, we can allow retailers to permission their data set to CPGs to utilize within their environment, within our platform. And some retailers are a little bit hesitant to do that because they want to maintain control of the data. And we have ways, without going into the details of our platform, to enable that greater control. But that for us is where we've seen in other markets the big opportunity for both retailers in terms of commercialization and also CPGs in terms of what they're really excited about. If a retailer can permission data, whether that be at a product level, relating to all the, product sales, transactions, etc., that relate to that CPG, or whether they look at more of an aggregated category view of, let's say, all deodorant buyers, just for an argument's sake, and they get to run some analysis on that category, or whether they look to do activation. That, from a collaboration perspective, is really exciting. But that's not the only answer, because you're right in terms of clean rooms allow overlapping between a retailer and also a publisher in certain cases. And I think there's some fairly well documented examples in market at the moment of where retailers and publishers, whether that be in the CTV space or wherever, have that kind of overlap capability. I think the other thing from a retailer perspective, when you look at data clean rooms, that is a big opportunity, is around looking at non-endemics. So there are concerns naturally from retailers about pushing non-endemics onto their on-site offering, because they don't want to impact the customer experience in a negative way going through your buying process and seeing an advert that isn't relevant and might perturb you from what you wanted to do. So when you're looking at what the opportunities are around a data clean room, if you have a load of information on pet food buyers and you want to then collaborate with a pet insurance company, that's a big opportunity for a retailer, because pet insurance is not where they kind of initially would have think they'd be able to make revenue from. But also they're not cannibalizing their own kind of on-site customer journey, because they're just enabling the clean room to maybe look at customer insights so that the pet insurance provider might be able to understand more about exactly who these customers are. Potentially they can look at then using that data to activate offsite.
Yeah, I was going to touch on non-endemic. I think you've given a wonderful example there.
And also things like sun cream and holidays, that there is definite opportunities around the non-endemics. Naturally, retailers are hesitant to impact their customer experience, but that doesn't mean there's other ways that non-endemics and retailers can work together for a mutually beneficial environment, whereby the retailer is increasing the revenue that they're able to attribute to their retail media business, and then the non-endemic is getting that valuable data, and that just has to be worked through between the parties involved.
Yeah, absolutely. The other advantage is that non-endemic spend is always incremental, and you stay away from the debate of whether this new spend that's coming is just cannibalization of your on-site spend, or is it truly new.
Exactly.
You mentioned at one point about how you've got, you can have your own data and then you can enrich with third-party data sources. And I was recently also reading some of these sources, including the likes of Experian. Can you explain what kind of third-party data sets these are and where they can be helpful?
Experian have a huge data set across the whole UK population. And again, when we talk about our identity infrastructure, our ability to take that data set that Experian have, and then on using our identity infrastructure, utilize that to do things like audience enrichment. So we can overlay it onto his own first-party data that they have, and you can do things like audience enrichment. You can do things like insights and understanding a little bit more about your customers, but also you can license that data to be able to then activate against off-site. Lookalike modeling again is a key kind of opportunity that comes out of that. And then also for partners that don't have any data or have very limited data, actually being able to bring that data and license that data and then utilize it within their own capabilities. We have a fantastic partnership with Sakana, whereby our CPG clients in some instances are leveraging the Sakana Pro Scores data, the old IRI Pro Scores data, to kind of better inform some of their own activation. So there's really some clever ways that you can look to leverage these third-party data sets.
Makes sense. And I'm just thinking about the kind of data enrichment, presuming most of the transactional data comes through retailers. When I think about Experian, the place where I've been exposed to Experian is my credit ratings. Is it that kind of non-transactional data enrichment that can be done through these third-party sources?
Yeah, as you say, the Experian data isn't so much the transactional-led data. It's more of that geo-demographic, socio-demographic data that they would have that enables advertisers to be able to understand more about their customers beyond just their transaction history and their spend behavior, their spend patterns, to actually understand more about them as a customer, the social demographic elements, things like what car they might drive, whatever it might be. There's all those wider elements that you can utilize to kind of better inform you on who your audience is, and obviously that then can lead to capabilities around informing your strategy for how you might want to communicate with them, when you might want to communicate with them, impact your targeting decisions that you might make. So that there's a huge opportunity there for partners to leverage that data set for some pretty exciting opportunities.
Right. Got it. Makes sense. From a retailer perspective, what is the minimum data they need to provide in order to monetize? And then as they mature, what additional data points do they start providing?
I think that the starting point is audience data. If you're looking to activate audiences, you obviously need that audience data. Initially, what a lot of retailers would start with is a selection of predefined audiences that they prescribe as being available to maybe a CPG. As we've seen with the retail partners that we have, that can mature as you start to bring in sales transactional data into your audience building capabilities. Then you can look to provide more bespoke audiences that you can build based on CPG briefs. I think what we've seen with some of the retail media networks that we power and that we work with is a lot of the time the CPG briefs that come in might not necessarily be answered by a pre-built audience that a retailer might have. And so part of that journey from a retailer perspective is to be able to have that quick creation of custom audiences. Bringing in the sales transactional data into that environment then also enables the measurements. That's a key element that is required to close the loop. You've started with your audience data. You're then looking also at your sales transaction data. You might want then your product file, the SKU level data, location data, on-site behavior data, additional metadata that really kind of ties everything together.
Yeah, from a CPG perspective, I'm thinking like an initial audience data is like just telling CPGs, here are some customers who buy soft drinks, for example, so that a Pepsi and a Coke might want to target those. But when you go to the later stages, is it to help CPGs with more tightly defined rule sets, like someone who buys soft drinks in the last 12 weeks, but is also buying something else at the same time and is on the website searching for something in the last? Is it that kind of granularity of targeting?
For the most advanced networks, you probably are looking to get that to that granularity, whether you're creating that level of bespoke audience all the time. I guess will depend on the level of investment that CPG may be making with you and your desire to be able to service them to satisfy the kind of the requests. But yes, absolutely. Going from pretty broad audiences of maybe just category buyers, and some retailers don't necessarily even have category buyers as an initial offering. They may just have lapsed customers or recent shoppers. As you add more data in, you add more capability in, then obviously you can get more bespoke.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately CPGs do want to be able to get pretty clever with the audiences.
Brilliant. When I think about this space, I've heard a few names, but from your perspective, who are your competitors in this space? More importantly, what are your points of differences versus them?
Yeah, I guess from our perspective, we probably would say that we don't have one kind of specific competitor. And I guess what I mean by that is, given our breadth of capabilities across, first party marketing, across retail media, across insights, audience building, activation and measurement, we don't necessarily have one competitor that can provide all of that we kind of go up against. And your point about what's our key points of difference, we would probably suggest is that you're tying all of those capabilities into a single platform rather than using point solution providers to support.
Got it. Recently, LiveRamp launched ATS. Seth, can you tell us a bit more about what ATS is?
Of course, yes. So ATS is LiveRamp's authenticated traffic solution. The purpose of that is to allow publishers to connect their first-party user data with LiveRamp's privacy-centering connector, the RAMP ID, which ultimately enables advertising on their authenticated inventory when advertisers want to do so. So the purpose of ATS is ultimately to enable personalization on cookieless inventory. And in today's world, we're looking at the likes of Safari, Firefox, Edge that are already cookieless, and moving into next year, when Chrome finally deprecates the cookie, it is going to be a key element that's going to allow advertisers to continue to do targeting across the open web moving forward.
So tackling addressability in a post-cookie world. When I think about LiveRamp, I think about the partnership with Meta, which has been in the press. Can you tell us more about what that partnership entails?
Of course, Meta is one of our key partners that we work with, and they make up part of our wider addressability infrastructure that ultimately is one of the key reasons where LiveRamp provides value to our partners. But Meta is obviously a beast and is a key part of the marketing mix of so many advertisers. So ultimately, the relationship that we have with Meta allows our clients to connect their first-party data into Meta to run campaigns. But obviously, that isn't the only platform. Like we said, that's one of the values that we look to provide, that wider addressability across multiple platforms.
Understood. And how important is this identity infrastructure? Is that the backbone? Because I'm guessing with the identity infrastructure, you don't need to pass PII information.
Yeah, correct. The identity infrastructure that we have allows our partners or advertisers to connect their data into the ecosystem and collaborate without any movement of PII. Yeah. That's really one of the key benefits and elements that we look to bring when we look to support partners in this space, and especially for retailers looking to scale their offsite proposition. I speak to lots of retailers, lots of DPOs at retailers, and minimization of the movement of their customer data is always top of their priority list. And that obviously goes slightly against the notion of wanting to scale your retail media proposition to be able to deliver audiences for your CPGs into as many channels across different capabilities as possible. So that there needs to be a balance to be found between those two elements, and that's where we look to support our partners and our clients, as it were, in giving that scale of reach, that scale of connection, whilst minimizing the movement of any PII out into the ecosystem.
That brings me very well to my next question. You alluded to some of the challenges that retailers see, especially DPOs who are looking into how to help scale a retail and data monetization business without transferring personal data. When I look at this space, it looks like it's good profit business for retailers and they should be rushing towards it. Why aren't all retailers adopting a data clean room solution? Is that something that you've seen that is stopping them or making them hesitant or making them take longer to launch a data clean room solution?
So I would say one of the key elements that you need to have be able to have a clean room solution is you need to have the underlying data. So there's elements of building a retail media proposition that you kind of have to build up the layers. Some retailers need to get their data in order first before they look at what a clean room solution can provide to them. There's no point, obviously, paying money to have a data clean room solution if you've got no data to actually put into it. So that's one of the key things, is why not everybody has immediately jumped in. That being said, I would say that a lot of retailers are looking at clean room solutions as part of their understanding. But like I've alluded to at the top of the call, this is all still pretty new space for retailers. There's a lot of terminology. There's a lot of education probably that's still required about exactly what a clean room is, how a clean room can be used. That isn't helped by different clean room providers talking in about kind of capabilities in maybe slightly different ways. Not that one is doing it right and one's doing it wrong, but obviously everybody has maybe some slightly different capabilities that they're keen to talk about.
Yeah.
So there's certainly an education that constantly needs to happen, and I think will happen.
Yeah.
The expansion of the market is going to lead to more retailers using a clean room solution. And I'd say probably within the next couple of years, everybody will probably have one in place.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Just thinking that retailers are already sitting on structured data to be used is it's probably not the right starting point. There's a lot of work that retailers themselves need to do to get that view of the customer and then monetize it. Looking ahead, where do you see the next big opportunity for DCRs outside of retail and CPG?
I think certainly the wider opportunity for clean rooms is looking at non-endemics, like we've spoken about earlier, and what that can bring in. But actually the opportunities in other sectors, so whether that be the travel sector, whether that be the entertainment sector, where again you have rich data sets in those spaces that other partners would be keen to leverage for their own marketing. From an entertainment perspective, you might have, let's say, the cinemas who have the data themselves, and you have the movie studios that have no data. So there's opportunities maybe there to look at where there is that combination of partners that are really keen to access data, other partners that have rich data, and also maybe partners where you've got two sets of rich data, but that they complement each other. So there's all sorts of opportunities. Over the next 2 years, there will be people that will jump in two-footed and give stuff a go, and they will probably be the ones that are maybe the most successful initially, because they will test, they will learn, they will make mistakes, and they will grow. And there might be others that might be a little bit hesitant to jump in, that will look to take their time, and they may also try and find some good opportunities. So yeah, I think the next couple of years is pretty exciting for the clean room and collaboration space.
Yeah, wonderful space for you to be in, and thank you so much for sharing your perspectives.
Not at all, Keshav. Thank you very much for having me.